I'm Maya Miltella. I work at SUBMARINER, which is the organizer of this webinar. I'm going to start with a short introduction to just what we do and also to the topic that we're going to talk about today. And then I'm going to hand over to our packed array of speakers for the day. SUBMARINER is a nonprofit for actors and initiatives across the Baltic Sea region. We're a network of different partners, and together we try to shape the blue economy in Europe and improve the environment and the economy. We often act as a partner in different projects. We can do project coordination. Often we do stakeholder mapping, different kinds of exploitation events, organization, communication. And what we do is that we really try to promote the members' interests and matchmake between different partners, organizations, and projects in our database. So we try to make the most out of the network that we have and make sure that we can do as much as we can for the blue economy in Europe. The SUBMARINER network at the moment consists of 13 full members, and then we have over 30 associate members, and a whole bunch of other organizations also kind of adjacent to us in different ways. It can be through different projects, and also as mentors and coaches that we can ask for help or expertise in our network. We work very broadly within the blue economy. We work with both low trophic aquaculture, fish aquaculture, like brass systems, for example, sustainable fisheries, education, business support, policy, multi-use, marine spatial planning. So we really try to create cross sections between our different solutions and make sure that we can help each other out in the different areas. And here's an example of the different projects that we have going on right now. Everything from science-based policy to business development to educational skills, and also kind of cultivation demonstrations and innovation projects. Whoops. And of course, I also have to promote our Blue Biomatch, which is our digital network where we invite anyone, also SUBMARINER non-members, to join our different communities, to learn from each other, to kind of throw out questions, and to find connections to other people in the blue economy, beyond your borders and also beyond your topics. So that was it for the SUBMARINER part, and now we're going to go over to the agenda. I will start with providing a short introduction to kind of the topics that we're going to talk about today. After that, I'm going to hand over to our first speaker, Sylvia. We're going to start with kind of getting an overview of different kinds of blue business cases for the blue economy, not only the bioeconomy, but also other topics. Sorry, I'm muting everybody. Please remember to keep yourself muted if you're not speaking. It can get a little bit annoying with the background noise. And then we're also going to talk about some very specific kind of blue business models, and I'm going to go into how we define these different areas. But I think what we can say in general is that we're going to talk about how we can finance good blue solutions around Europe today. So I'm going to try to set the scene a little bit and talk about the state of play and what we know. So today we're talking about the business case of the blue economy, but what do we actually mean with that? What we're going to try to figure out is why investments and effort make sense and how we achieve this vision. Business models and business cases are often used kind of interchangeably. And for those of you who maybe have studied economy or finance, are not going to agree with the use of all of them today. A business case is more a justification of why it makes sense to do something, and a business model describes the implementation a lot more in detail. How are we going to get to this vision? And we're going to talk about both. So please don't get too caught up in this definition, but we're going to kind of touch upon both of them. But what we want to focus on today is to explain why this is important for Europe and why we should finance blue businesses in general. The blue economy offers a very compelling business case. We have strong economic growth potential, we have global market leadership, we have climate resilience, we have technological competitiveness and social benefits for coastal communities. And this has really been highlighted in a lot of high-level reports. An example is the EU Blue Economy report from 2025, where you can get really hard facts and figures of why it is important for us that we really focus on the blue economy and how this can provide sustainable in Europe in general. What's important to note is that these figures that are present here are really an underestimation of the importance of the blue economy. One of the reasons is that it's really hard to define what the blue economy is and what the different sectors are. There is a quote that really highlights this very well, and it's Sylvia Earle that said, "Without the blue, there's no green." And I think this really shows why it's so hard for us to estimate the importance of the blue economy, because a lot of the time we have spillover effects also in other industries or other sectors, not only in the marine or kind of in the blue, but also on the green side. So the business case of a blue economy, we really have a lot of them. As I said before, we have a fast growing market potential and economic value. A lot of the people here in the room, you know that we're trying to work a lot with increasing the amount of low traffic aquaculture, for example, or increasing the uses of blue resources in general. Also, we have a very strong innovation and technology development in the area. A lot of the solutions that we are developing in the blue are very climate friendly. So we might have carbon uptake, for example, and they're usually very low in energy input. So climate neutrality and energy security are some of them. We also know about multi-use cases. We know about ocean wind farms, but we also have sustainable food systems connected to all of these areas. All of this provides money, so circular and sustainable economic opportunities, not only for coastal communities, but also for the nations in general, and then the social and regional cohesion. So we all share the sea, so it's important that we share it also in terms of policy, legislation, and to support all of these great developments, we have a lot happening kind of on the financial sector. So the EU has created an enabling policy and funding landscape for blue economy. We have the EU mission Restore Ocean and Waters. We have European Maritime and Fisheries. We have MFAP. We have Interreg, Life, Blue Invest. And in the recent years, we can see a lot of reports coming out kind of describing how the roadmap towards a sustainable blue economy is going to look like. We have the European Investment Bank pointing out investment gaps, how to charter the course for innovation finance in the blue. And recently, they also came out with a report together with the Global Seaweed Coalition, looking at financing opportunities for the European Investment Bank in kind of innovation in this financial area. We're not going to talk about any of this on such a high level today, but today we're going to get a bit of an overview about what is happening in different projects around Europe, looking at the financial aspect of these blue business cases. We have tried to put all of our speakers kind of in a logical way, so that we're going to start with a bit of a broader perspective, looking more at business cases in general. So if we come back to what I said in the beginning, more how is this going to work out? Why do we want to do this? And then we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into maybe specific resources, specific products, and kind of do more of a transition into business models for how is this actually going to work out? What innovations can we use in the financial in the financial world to make it sustainable and last long. And with that, I'm going to hand over to our first speaker, which is Sylvia Sato from SUBMARINER, talking about business interaction models for Mission Ocean Scale-Up.
Nice. Thank you, Maya, for the great introduction about business models in the blue economy. And yes, so I will be bringing in some of the findings of specifically one deliverable from the Prep for Blue project, which actually has had an entirely work package really dedicated to understanding how we can support an enabling environment for business models in terms of regulation, in terms of the financial ecosystem for also scaling up innovative solutions. And I don't know if we can navigate to the next slide. And the following one in particular. Basically, in this specific deliverable, we looked and we specifically focused on the interaction models as well when it comes to business models. So how is it that we can engage the business community in achieving the objectives of Mission Ocean alongside with what the public sector, for example, can offer. And so the deliverable really, in the end, kind of starting from this key question, really came to analyze 12 case studies where we have such a successful interaction between companies, but also between public entities, whether they are regions, whether they are universities, whether they are incubators, you know, and how all of these interactions and the interaction between, once again, public and private sector can also create good models that can promote, of course, the objectives of Mission Oceans. And of course, in the context of this deliverable, we also really strategically focused on deriving kind of like key recommendations for different actors within the blue economy, because the blue economy is not just businesses, and the blue economy is not only private sector, but of course it's also NGOs, it's also researchers, and it's also academia. So this here you can see an overview of the case studies that we covered. Today I will summarize three that I think are quite interesting, but I'm also sharing the link to the deliverable in the chat if you're interested. And generally, if you're interested in the topic, I should also invite you to check out more of the content of the Prep for Blue project, especially under Work Package 5. In the next slide, maybe, I just want to give you guys a quick reminder. I think that many of you are familiar with the Mission Ocean objectives. There's three key particular ones, you know, assigned with different basins to protect and restore marine and freshwater ecosystems and biodiversity, to prevent and eliminate pollution from our ocean, seas, and waters, of course, because it's not just about the seas, but it's also about inland waters. And also, lastly, to really make the case for a sustainable blue carbon neutral economy that is also circular. And so actually the very first case study that I also wanted to introduce in the next slide with regards to, and it's also included in the deliverable, really looks at this also at like thinking in the idea and merging different objectives. So, you know, the very first objective of, you know, understanding and also taking advantage of biodiversity, but also introducing this circular idea in our thinking in terms of also creating new businesses. And the case study actually looked at the young startup, actually from a very young entrepreneur that had a background in marine biology, that also really had a passion for seaweed. And, you know, in his day-to-day, he really saw a problem when it comes to his coasts in Portugal, and he realized that, for example, there was a growing problem in the growing case of algae blooms, especially with this one invasive brown algae species that every year would really create a lot of problems for the municipalities that were located on the coast, creating a lot of issues for local businesses that were working in tourism, as well as all sorts of other industries. And with his interest in also valorizing and with his passion for this biomass, he really managed to, and he really focused on trying to develop a sustainable method in which he could both of course, harvest the biomass to create all of these byproducts that we so often see that, are growingly more interesting for various markets, but also to do it in a way that can also have a positive economic impact for other activities along the coast. And so to do this, he needed help. And this is also where the collaboration between public and private sector really came in. And that's also kind of how he managed to really create the business model around this idea. So he first primarily kind of went to municipalities to understand what the needs also were from that side, but also to cooperate with public authorities, for example. And one of the particular collaborations that he had was with the Directorate General for Natural Resources, Safety and Maritime Services in Portugal, where he was also able to secure an experimental fisheries permit that really allowed him in the first year to try to harvest the seaweed, to try to harvest the biomass in a sustainable way and still kind of create like almost a blueprint for his business. This also went along with the University of Algarve, as well as the Blue Bio Alliance, a very important incubator in Portugal. And through this collaboration, then he moved forward to implement what was the main idea, which was to using a vacuum light system to harvest the biomass that was gonna arrive on the coast. But at the same time, he also put a lot of emphasis in monitoring, and that's also something that he's stressing more and more now, is to also monitor how these blooms are growing and also ensuring this information sharing with the municipalities as well as with also other public authorities that are interested in this effect. And all of this, once again, was going back to his main goal, which was to valorize this biomass and reduce the impact that this biomass was having on communities. And as preliminary outcomes, as of 2024, he had already collected 3 tons of seaweed as part of his proof of concept, as well as started to really kind of show that it's a viable model to not only support and to create further products, but also to support a model that was circular and that could also create resilience and costs and support also some of the other objectives of the Mission Ocean. Another case study, this time based in Germany from some German entrepreneurs, actually also came from more of a business idea and followed a very similar path in terms of collaboration. So this is a project for a much broader initiative, which was really to be able to grow Atlantic bluefin tuna in an aquaculture system, in a floating aquaculture system. So a very different type of business, also a type of business that of course requires a lot more capital and a lot more input. And so the main idea is that here they really wanted to pioneer a commercial scale reproduction of this aquaculture, of this Atlantic bluefin aquaculture in captivity, and to really then possibly pass on to a land-based RAS system. And so through collaborations with universities, of course, and research center, they first developed the idea, but they also very critically interacted with the Blue Invest. So one of the initiatives that also Maya cited before, actually they did win a Blue Invest award in 2023 for the category of sustainable food and feed from the ocean. And in addition to this, they collaborated with the EIT Food Sustainable Aquaculture Competition. And so part of the collaboration here not only came at the coming up with the idea, but it also kind of came in trying to collect the necessary capital to scale this idea and make this idea take place. Of course, they also face a lot more challenges in implementation as well. But here the key idea was that they were really able to interact with existing ecosystems and existing incubators that were supporting blue innovation, and also for a broader goal, which also once again to establish more resilience in terms of our food sources and also advancing more carbon neutral practices in a field that in which this is also quite challenging. And the last case I also wanted to present today, it's a different one. So this is really not a new business, but it's also how business model can also be advanced by existing companies. So, and this case specifically goes to Elia, which is the Belgium electricity transmission system operator. Which of course right now was really focusing on developing the offshore wind power and to power Belgium as well. And in doing this, was considering and is planning on creating the world's first artificial energy island in the North Sea, which really is meant to create a connection between land and sea in terms of electricity. Of course, such a project has, as many can imagine, has a lot of implication for life at sea and for biodiversity. So the company from the very beginning put a big emphasis on collaborating with a lot of stakeholders in order to ensure an open and productive process, in order to incorporate more natural positive measures in the energy islands to, you know, to preserve and in some cases even enhance biodiversity. And so the goal here and the vision from the beginning was to include a diverse consortium of stakeholders with NGOs, university, but also public authorities, other private institutions, all of them really engaged in co-creating this nature inclusive design, and also overcoming some of the technical and coordination challenges involved in the process, because this is different stakeholders with different interests. So a lot of emphasis was also put in finding solutions and into constantly redefining a good framework of collaboration to implement all of this. And so this was really done by creating and aligning since the very beginning on what were the main goals in terms of technical alignment and biodiversity preservation as well, and then develop an approach that could still follow and would still maintain these key objectives from the beginning. And so this, of course, the goal is to also facilitate all of this, in terms of the energy transition, but it's also important to once again integrate existing activity to the other ones. So overall, in the next slide, I included some of the key conclusions and recommendations for various stakeholders from the deliverable and all of the different case studies. I think that the value here for businesses in pursuing these interaction models is to invest in partnership and really leveraging different funding opportunities in more and creative ways, but also adopt sustainable technologies and focusing on market readiness as well. For academia to really work on knowledge and transfer, so really prioritizing activities that connect universities and technical institutes with businesses and aligning with also what are the industry needs for the future. And for policymakers, really focusing on the facilitation of finance, of funding and regulations, as well as supporting innovation through different policies and also creating incentives for sustainable solutions. And lastly, also from the NGOs and civil society to really focus on policy advocacy, as this is often done, but also on engaging communities and maybe facilitating some of the connections between all of the other partners that can set up for success for all of these business models. And this was more or less what we have from this deliverable.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. Great presentation. I'm going to see if we get some questions in the chat. Sylvia's not going to be here until the very end, so any questions that we have for her, we're going to forward, and we're going to include them in the notes later. With that, we're going to do a quick move on to Anna Lopez from Oat Farms, talking about sustainability goals of business models. If Anna is here.
Yes. Hello, good
Perfect.
morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, sounds great.
Okay, great. Okay. Do you transition the slide or should I pass
Yeah,
them?
just let me know when to move on.
I can let you know. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about the sustainability goals of business model. So it's basically the sustainability part that we have included into the business model that we have been doing for the project Ult Farms. So first of all, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about what is Ult Farms. So first, if you can pass the slide, please. So Ult Farm is an innovation action type project that is funded by the European Union, Horizon Europe program, and the main aim is to enhance Europe's capacity for low trophic aquaculture systems, including mainly seaweed and mussels. How does it Ult Farm this? So it does it by promoting the sharing of marine space in multi-use context. It is combining and integrating novel engineering with the study of ecological and biological processes to optimize the production of these species. So Ult Farms also aims to establish commercially viable solutions in challenging environments, places that have hard offshore conditions and low salinity environment. And the results of the project will help to boost the self-consumption of this product in Europe. And all of this is done while prioritizing environmental and biodiversity protection, the carbon footprint reduction, and the nature restoration. Next slide, please. Where is this happening? So Ult Farms includes 6 low trophic aquaculture pilots that are located in offshore wind farms, covering the entire value chain expertise for low trophic aquaculture production across the North and Baltic Seas, and involving the countries that are highlighted here: Belgium with the pilot Belwind, the Netherlands, the pilot from Borsele, Germany has 2 pilots, Fino 2 and Fino 3, and Denmark has another couple of pilots, Hanold and Samso. So during the time of the project, different stakeholders from the entire aquaculture value chain are involved in optimizing the production of the marine species of interest from a commercial and environmental point of view, gathering these 2 main points, while generating clean energy from wind resources. So within the course of the project, the main role of CTA has been contributing to the establishment of the commercially viable solutions. With the contribution from the pilot and the project partner, we have been gathering information about the project tangible output that could be potentially exploited, and the exploitation pathway have been shaped based on that. And this provides the input, let's say, for the exploitation path that we are currently developing. Next slide, please. So all of these results have been categorized and divided into 5 different categories: structures that include the equipments like net for growing mussels, etc., consultancy services, biomass production, sensors, and software. So there is a total of 18 results that different stakeholders, partners have been submitting. And during the course of Ult Farms, CTA have been gathering information about main partners, activities, the value of the project, etc. And with this information, we have built business model canvases that I'm not going to explain right now, or not in detail, because later on I will show what we are considering as a business model canvas and how we have integrated the sustainability part. Next slide, please. Next. So I'm gonna focus, or I'm gonna start to define what is the sustainable development. That is what we have integrated. Sustainable development is the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So all of this includes three main points: environment, social, and economic. From an environmental point of view, practices to improve this are these that are in this slide: reducing greenhouse gas emission, increase production and use of energy from renewable sources, conservation of biodiversity, sustainable practices adoption, raising awareness and engaging communities, a very important point, and promoting circular economy. From a social point of view, we can highlight things that we need to consider to try to implement our business models to try to avoid poverty and social inequality, socioeconomic inequality, discrimination, prejudice, and social exclusion, lack of access to resources, insecurity, and conflict, poor governance. And next, economic. From the economical point of view, we try to implement the minimization of the environmental impact, social and economic equity, more resilient and challenge-capable economy, a more widespread adherence of companies to the management base on principle of responsibility and ethics. So with all of these 3 points, we have been gathering information from all the ULFAN results, and we have given some recommendations on how to fill these weaknesses in the sustainability aspect and how to integrate them into the business model. Next slide, please. So we have based mainly in the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 sustainable goals, and the European Union taxonomy. Next slide. So these are the 17 goals that are the European goals that we have taken into consideration: no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduce inequality, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice and strong institutions, and partnership for the goals. So we have been analyzing all the results and see if they are meeting or not the requirement for these sustainable development goals. Next slide, please. The previous one. Sorry. I think yes. So all of these goals, we split it into 3 categories: environment, society, and economy. And that are the 3 aspects that are more important for the sustainability. So next slide. We have been taking into consideration the result, so the ULFAN result, how well they are aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. In the first part, so we have split it into these 3 categories to have an impression, an idea of how well the results are aligned in the different points, in the economic, social, and sorry, I forgot the last one, environment, which is the main one, is why we are talking about that. So in red, you can see how many results are not aligned with that goal. In orange, we are slightly aligned. In gray, moderately aligned. Light blue, mostly aligned. Fully aligned are represented with dark blue. So that gives an impression of how the project is aligning or not. As you can see, there are quite good alignment, but there are still some results that are not very well aligned. So there are quite a lot of things to implement into the result. Next slide. This is pretty much the same that I told you, but we split it between the Belgian, Danish, German, and the next slide, the Dutch pilot to have an overview of each country, how well they are doing in terms of alignment with this goal. Next slide. Next. Yes. So next. So this is just a little overview of how each of the Sustainable Development Goals we put a color as considering as achieved if the challenge remains, if significant challenge remained, or major challenge remains. So each, depending on the country, we have been analyzing the results and have categorized into different colors to see at which stage of achievement of the sustainable goals they have reached. So this gives an overview of how advanced or delayed they are, or how is the alignment, let's say, with that.
We have 3 slides left, and we have to start moving a little bit faster.
Yeah. The next slide. And next, so that it can be. So we have no previous one. So we have also focusing the greenwashing, which is some entities sell themselves as very green, very sustainable, but then when you go to the inside of the everyday work, you see that it's not really the case. So we have based on this reference that is in here. And we have focusing 6 environmental objectives that are the ones that are highlighted on the left side. First of all, we identified the business activities from the project result. We classified each economic activity as if it's taxonomically aligned or not, and then we calculate the financial key performer index, and then we integrated this classification of the economic activity with the financial KPI, and finally report which are the activities that are taxonomically aligned from a sustainable point of view. Next slide, please. Next. So we did also a circularity economy survey in which we asked a number of questions that are included in a matrix we had about, for example, what are the current social, economic, and environmental sustainability aspects of the business model, or if there are any specific measures implemented to reduce waste and increase recycling, etc., etc. And based on that, we provided some scores depending on how well they are aligned, and we generated this graph that provide us an overview of how much agree or disagree at some moment of the project the different entities with circular economy. This is from last year. After the implementations we are making the business model, at the end of the project we aim that this line it's shift a bit more toward the agree or strongly agree. Next slide, please. And finally, well, this is what is in green is the traditional business model canvas that we did, and what we have done is included a couple of parts that are the one in red that includes the eco-social costs and eco-social benefits that are based on this analysis that we have done. Next slide. And with that, I thank you for your attention, and I invite you to take the social acceptance survey that is very important for the to know what society thinks about that and how well all fund results will be received in society. Thank you very much for your attention.
Amazing, Anna. Thank you so much. A lot of really nice figures here. We're going to share the slides with everybody after we're done. So you'll have access to all of these figures, and here you also have Anna's. You will also have access to the contacts of all of the speakers if you have questions. With that, I'm going to hand over to Martins to talk a bit more specifically about the seaweed market in Europe and the opportunities we have there.
Hi everyone. Yeah. So as Maya already mentioned, I'm Martin Sostowski. But what I would like to start with, it would be on market trends. So would be a little bit more interesting for you as well to follow up. So basically, it's about I34Seaweed project, and its slogan is invest in seaweed innovation across the Europe, and it says everything that we are propelling the seaweed sector in the whole Europe. We have 16 partners. It's very diverse knowledge as well, and in different countries. So with the multiple business cases that are our core of the project. And we just closed our open call we had in October. So as well, we are having broader and broader network in the project as well, but it's all related to these business cases. So here you can see here as well budget and all the project terms. So we can skip to the next slide, I think. Regarding this European seaweed market. So if we are looking at the global market from United Nations report in 2024, the whole market is $70 billion USA. And the annual growth rate is approximately from 9 till 12%. So the idea is it could reach 25 to 30 billion USA dollars in 2030, which is a big growth. But if we are looking through Europe's perspective, that the Asian dominance continues still with more than 99% of the biomass production. So basically in Europe, we produce less than 1% of it all. So we have a lot of plenty opportunities ahead of us. And yeah, in Europe, the current market is over 1 billion euros. With the expected annual growth rate from 8 till 10%, which is a little bit less than global, and reaching 2 till 3 billions per 2030. So it's still a big growth there. And why is it especially growing in Europe? So European Union is driven by sustainability and circular economy policies significantly that support this growth. Countries leading this expansion include France, Ireland, Norway, and Netherlands, which invest sustainable cultivation practices, processing infrastructure, and new product development. And what is more interesting, when we are moving from wild harvest seaweed to cultivated seaweed in Europe slowly, and more countries are now coming in and putting this as a priority. So let's flip to the next slide. Yeah, and regarding that, we in project we did a pestle analysis, and what we see here the most interesting is, of course, for the political side, what we need is harmonization, because we have a robust EU support at this point, but legislative fragmentation persists across the member states. So particularly regarding aquaculture licensing and novel food certification, this is what we need to harmonize in between the states. Second one, the economics, costs and scalability hurdles. So high production costs in Europe at this point is the big issue. So from 500 euros till 1,000 euros per ton of biomass. And it's not very competitive if we are looking at against the Asian producers. So we need to somehow lower the costs. The next one, social, is rising acceptance. Of course, consumer awareness growth is increasing, especially among eco groups. And supporting this premium position and sustainable projects should be our priority. We still should push regarding the awareness, because the more people is aware, the more they try it out, the more the product goes into the market. And next one is technology. Of course, to unlock full seaweed's potential in the future bioeconomy will require balanced action. So combining technological investment with clear regulation, government support, and strong stakeholder collaboration. So we need to do it holistically. We cannot do it on our own or just push through one specific point in the system. And I think what's one here is missed is legal. So in the slide this repeats political, but sorry for that. It's a legal evolving framework. So efforts are underway to unify standards for food safety. And that includes heavy metals and iodine levels. And besides that as well, maritime spatial planning is very important. So we need to align these questions as well. So overall, the short conclusion would be we need to align in between all the states and harmonize already existing improvements and innovations that we have. Next slide, please. So yeah, I like this one. So when it's seaweed time, it's seaweed time. So we have reached this point in the market where we see it starts to grow on its own, but we still need to have this little push in so we can continue on. Next slide, please. So, and now we are here for the first business case. So it's Hatchery Innovation Center. And it's led by Irish Seaweed Consultancy with the contributors Royal Netherlands Institute for Sea Research. So regarding this business case, its aim is to creating a hatchery innovation center in Galloway, Ireland, like real physical center. It will also house a commercial biobank and provide space for small companies to test new seaweed-based product and ideas. So it's a safe space. If you don't have a lot of money, you can go out and at least try and have this small community to propel these ideas, which is very important. And as we saw in technological development trends as well mentioned, that we should have this one. And besides that, the European seaweed value chain suffers from almost non-existent hatchery sector. Yeah, this is a big issue, especially if we are talking about bringing in new species that we want to cultivate, because it's very short list of species we actually cultivate for commercial use in Europe, making the industry dependent on non-controlled systems or wild specimens. So we need to improve this heavily. The business case addresses the need for domestication and selective breeding. Yeah, it's very important to have this native climate resilient seaweed specimens for stability and long-term productivity, especially in this climate change environment. We talk a lot about how the climate changes and how it impacts species. So we need to be more agile in regards to this, especially regarding hatchery business cases. And technological development, of course, must start from the bottom. So it's hatcheries, and then we build on, because you cannot plan huge seaweed farms if you don't have support from hatchery. How can you grow? It's a bottleneck then already. So next slide, please. So yeah, next one business case we have in project digital twining for offshore aquaculture. Actually, it says quite a lot. The leader of this one is Hades. And its aim is to develop in close collaboration with seaweed farmers the digital twining system for future smart monitoring tools, flexible settings for different farm setups, and easy to use interface. So basically, this is to ease up, make the data more efficient, and so it can help or support more the farmers itself. And this could be the way we could cut these costs of producing biomass as well. And what's underneath it? Of course, it's precision aquaculture solutions, are critical utilization OET tool. So sensors, networks, remote sensing, and machine learning, of course. And it's all need to be in combined as well in a holistic approach. So digital twins and AI-based forecasting tools are being evaluated to enhance biomass output while minimizing environment effects and optimization of traditional systems. And this is as well this holistic approach part. If we are not just evolving our tools, we actually physically harvest or technology we use there, but as well we need to integrate this AI or machine learning or artificial intelligence tools. Besides that, to make those processes as well more efficient, because everything needs to grow at the same pace as well to reach the target. Next slide, please.
We have a few slides left, but I need to ask you to speed up a little bit. So maybe you can just mention the key parts of each slide.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, sorry for that. All right. So the next two business cases are quite related. So I put under one topic. It's food and nutrition sector. Of course. So one is seaweed-based food products that are not like directly base of the seaweed, but when seaweed is integrated in. And the second one is froze dried seaweed market entry. And why it's important, because to have this growth or scale up of the seaweed market, we need to know how to deal with it. And one of the cases would be, the famous one are the frozen or dried seaweed. So we need to align with this one as well. I think afterwards we can see the slides, so I cannot read. I will not read what's in them. But basically, this is a huge potential market direction, and we need to unlock this potential as well. So next slide then. So this is quite similar as well, but this seaweed-based meat products. And what's interesting, we are not just removing the meat itself, but we are depleting the environmental impact. We are integrating seaweed in as a part of it. And I think this is very interesting case, how we can propel actually and move into markets that are already established in the EU system. And this segment leverages high consumer demand. So for health conscious, vegan and sustainable diets. So it's a growing market. Next slide, please, then. Yeah, and for the biofertilizers and biostimulants in this business case, of course, the lead is Ficacera. They have operations in Spain and Mexico. And what's interesting is the agriculture industry as well needs to switch regarding climate change and this circular economy approach. So they need to somehow switch how they process. And one of the cases would be take the nutrients from the sea that seaweed has accumulated, make from that biofertilizer and then put it back on the field. So you create this whole loop and have more stable and dynamic system in the end. Next slide, please, then. So yeah, regarding seaweed-based cosmetics, the lead here is Algal Plus, and with contributors of University of Cumbria. And this case promotes the valorization of natural marine resources through sustainable production, offering environmentally responsible alternative to conventional cosmetics. So these are the integrants we actually can replace with more sustainable integrants we have from the seaweed. And of course, it opens a new strategic opportunity as well, and brings us already in established huge high price value markets that brings again new opportunities and new innovations as well. So basically, these are all our business cases from this project. I hope it was useful for you all. And yeah, of course, there's more market trends, but I just cannot go in one presentation. So thank you all for following us up. And just for cross-cutting challenges in the end, so barriers we are still need to somehow overachieve. And I already mentioned some trends and maybe some ideas how we can achieve that, but still it's one point we need to take in our mind when we are tackling this challenge. So regulatory complex and licensing delays. Of course, it's a very complex procedure. So we have limited scale and capital constraint. We need more money to put in technology and infrastructure as well. It's a price sensitivity. Of course, the higher operational expenses rises the price of the biomass and the product. So we need to balance it out when we are planning and doing these innovations. And global competition, of course, there is another big, much bigger market. So we need to be smart in our strategies as well, how we approach this. And of course, supply chain risks, since we're vulnerable to the climate change impacts and seasonal variability. And here the hatchery actually centers could come and help. If we have more agile species, we can easily and much faster adjust if we have better infrastructure and so on and so on. So it's very holistic approach that we need to do to tackle these all challenges, but they are still there. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Martins. We're gonna jump straight into our next presentation, which is by Frederick Bruce, talking about the community-supported aquaculture and the business case of this from the Cool Blue project.
Thank you very much, Maya. Go straight to the next slide. I apologize to the next speakers. I'm probably going to run over time, supposed to be done by 3 minutes, but let's see what happens. So Cool Blue is a joint effort between 2 projects, Cool Blue and Cool Blue Baltic. We're calling it a platform for Blue Community Enterprise. Next slide, please. And community enterprise, we're defining as a type of social enterprise. So this is not about making money, it's about creating value. So there's a difference there because the goals are not just about profit, it's all about economic, social, environmental objectives for local communities. So profits, for example, are reinvested in the community directly. The company itself is also owned by the community, so more like a cooperative model. Next slide, please. And an example of this is a supermarket in the US, which is completely owned by the employees itself, which makes it more resilient to external forces like big market forces that come in and want to buy up, or they want to fire everyone, etc. So it makes it more resilient as an economic model at the local level. Next slide, please. So to talk about the project, so there are two projects under one call of the original project called Blue, and the other one's called Seafarer in Ireland, which has now ended, but Cool Blue has a few months to go. And the general gist is to assess the technical and operational feasibility of regenerative ocean farming, and the outcomes will be business plans, skills development, and the knowledge on impacts of low trophic aquaculture predominantly. And it's generally meant for as a lifeline for fishers. So fishers who are struggling with declining catches can then diversify into aquaculture of seaweed and mussels to supplement their income. Next slide, please. So to explain this, I'm not going to talk about aquaculture. I'm going to talk about gardens, actually. So there are two kind of business models that I'm going to look at that we're taking inspiration from. And the first is a market garden. So if you're not familiar with this, this is a small-scale agriculture enterprise, generally growing salads, fruits, and vegetables, very localized, very fresh, very healthy. Doesn't make very much money, but it often has support from the community. You can get a veg box scheme, for example, like a subscription model. And this is pretty much the antidote to the ultra-processed food that you get in the supermarkets these days. So if you want to live longer, get food from a market garden. Next slide, please. The other garden is a community garden. Some of you might be familiar with this. This is very big in the UK where I come from. Allotments, they're also called, but it's generally public land. It could be school grounds or other disused spaces next to railway lines. And you can get a plot of just a few square meters to grow fruit and vegetables. This is what they did in the Second World War to feed themselves in times of need. So it is all about resilience. And again, it provides fresh food. It's generally very, very versatile. So there's lots of different species in there. So you get biodiversity hotspots, even microclimates. And it's a great place for social interaction, integration, and opportunities for education, therapy, and recreation. And there can be money made through that. But again, it's not a big profit-making scheme. Next slide, please. So in the project, we thought, okay, so these two things already exist. What about doing them in the sea? So this is what we understand as regenerative ocean farming, because regenerative is not just about the ecology, in our view, it's about also the economic side and the social side. So how do we regenerate local communities so that they can actually sustain themselves with jobs, financially, and with food? And another word that we're calling it, because community-supported agriculture already exists, these veg box schemes that I mentioned. So we're terming it community-supported aquaculture. Next slide, please. So why do we need it? As I mentioned, the declining fisheries, poor quality food in supermarkets, social polarization, fragile supply chains, and the antidote to this is the opportunities that we saw under the community gardens, including things like carbon storage, nutrient uptake, and pollution remediation. Next slide, please. Yeah, and the term regeneration is one of these buzzwords, and it's generally about going beyond sustainability. So the time is up, really, with sustainability. It's too late to be sustainable. In our opinion, it's time to go beyond that and see how we, if we use sustainability as the minimum, what can we do beyond that? So how can we actually get living systems to regenerate themselves with minimal input and minimal energy from us? Next slide, please. Because the current growth model is often deleterious to social and natural capital. So you see a lot of profit-making businesses actually require a lot of damage to people in terms of long hours, making them ill from working too hard, or dangerous jobs, and also natural capital by like chopping down trees to grow soy or whatever. The regenerative model tries to support all three of these types of capital because they're equally important, and it's more sustainable this way, ironically. Next slide, please. So what do they look like, these regenerative ocean farms? Thank you. Then this is an example in Sweden on the left of just a community farm who've built their own little platform, also called a flupsy, a floating upwelling system, to grow mussels. but you can also grow any kind of bivalves or seaweeds. And on the right here is actually a project, my weekend hobby, where I live in Flensburg, where we grew 50 kilos of sugar kelp right in the city centre as a demonstration site for the local people to show what is possible. And there's a lot of interest, so we're hoping to develop this further. Next slide, please. Next one.
It's loading.
Clock is ticking. Oh, it's probably the
It's loading.
images.
So
But yeah, anyway, they're often built by the communities themselves, these platforms, so it's low cost, but high impact, because you get a lot of engagement from young people. There are a lot of local businesses who want to get involved. Some actually want to use the mussels in local restaurants and things like that. In Denmark, they have these kind of clubs where people actually grow the mussels together, much more like a community garden. So yeah, as I was saying about the topic of regeneration, it's not just about environmental issues, it's not just about money, it's about across the board health, so social, physical, mental health, which is our definition of wealth, not money. So next slide, please. And the business model is, again, not just about profit, it's about purpose, about impacts, and then it might have different revenue models. The one we're looking at, it generally has a very strong social environmental mission. In terms of impact, it has deep community benefits. The revenue model is generally supported by public grants or a mix with some revenue from local businesses who might be making products with biomass. And then in terms of the market focus, it doesn't expect consumers or customers to be able to pay for everything. It might have a charitable arm where there is some kind of soup kitchen or some kind of donation-based enterprise there. So yeah, it's not just about making money, and that's the kind of essence of a social enterprise. Next slide, please. And the good news is it's one of the cheapest forms of aquaculture out there. So this is a report from Planet Tracker a couple of years ago about regenerative aquaculture meeting the gap in supply that is expected by 2050 from offshore wrasse and cultivated seafood, which are considerably more complicated and expensive, whereas regenerative aquaculture is cheap as chips. Next, please. And so in terms of the actual business model we're promoting in the deliverable or this project, coastal tourism employed more than half of the blue economy in 2022 and generated more than a third of the value. So that is where we would place our primary focus for these types of initiatives. Next slide, please. And yeah, so examples of this are Airbnb experiences. This is this kind of experience tourism. On the bottom left in Galicia, you can go and dive in a mussel farm. And the veg box schemes I've already mentioned. This is a fish box scheme based on fisheries, but there is potential there to build it with local produce. And there's networks like in the US, Local Catch is a way to connect with local producers. Next slide, please. And we're taking this further to think, how can we actually build out these smaller operations into a larger producer organization, which is encouraged by the EU in its strategic guidelines, in what we call smallholder-based value chains. So this is something that exists in agriculture. You have a lot of small farmers who grow a certain amount of tons of wheat or rapeseed or whatever, and then that is aggregated and then sent to decentralized regional processing hubs, and then that is then processed and sold on to traders. So this is how we want to kind of build out this idea, but it's still very early stages. So this is the business model so far. Next slide, please. I think we're near the end. Yeah, so if you want to read more, coolbluefuture.org is the website, all one word. And this deliverable is 1.4, which has more detail about these business models and much more than I had to talk about. And I'm actually within time, but we're still over time in general. Thanks, everyone.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I think that was the speediest presentation that I've heard in a long time. As we said before, we're going to share all of these slides, and we're also going to share the context to our presenters. So if you have more questions afterwards, it should be fine. And with that, we're going to talk more about the not cheap as chips blue business models in wrasse with Mattas from Tetras.
Hello, everyone. A big thanks to the SUBMARINER team and previous speakers. My name is Mattas Zubas. I'm from Aquila Group, food, agriculture, and investment company from Lithuania, Baltics. We are a partner in the Tetras project, working closely with Pilot 2 and other stakeholders to deliver a feasibility study and a business plan for large-scale RAS shrimp farm. So if we move to the next slide, we'll see that in this presentation, I'll share how we explored geothermal water in RAS shrimp farming from both technical and economic angle. So we've looked at two paths, geothermal brine for mineralization, where we have empirical Pilot 2 study results, and geothermal heat for water heating, where we currently have a theoretical desk study modeling. And using a 100-ton per year modular RAS farm as our baseline, we modeled how both levers could influence the cost per kilo at higher scales, such as 300-ton and 1,000-ton per year capacity facilities, and how this could translate into future decision points. So in the next slide, we'll see why does this matter at all. So if we want local RAS shrimp grown to even come close to competing with imported shrimp from Asia and South America in terms of price, we have a big challenge ahead of us. And our challenge is to make a capital-intensive, energy-intensive system, which is RAS, economical.
Sorry, everybody, please remember to turn off your microphones.
No worries. So if we want this capital-intensive, energy-intensive system economically viable, while also improving its environmental profile. So, for example, in colder climates, which is the Baltic Sea region, heating and stable water chemistry are major cost and risk drivers. So at the same time, buyers and policymakers are increasingly focused on traceability, local production, and lower carbon footprint. And geothermal resources are interesting because they might help on both fronts. Cost stability and ESG performance, if they can be integrated safely and reliably. So if we move to the next slide, we'll see that shrimp doesn't care about our spreadsheets. They care about stable conditions. It's a really, really sensitive species. It's not the same as growing any other kind of, for example, fish species, trout, or similar. It's really, really different. So for Vaname, that means keeping temperature around 28 to 30 degrees, salinity in a comfortable brackish range, and holding pH, alkalinity, nitrogen compounds in tight bands, and monitoring that live every hour, every minute. It's not like you can check the water parameter every day. So when these water parameters are stable, the biology can become stable. So growth, survival, and feed conversion behave as expected, more or less. And when biology is stable, our economics stabilize as well, because we get predictable biomass out per unit of feed, energy, and labor in. Let's move on and let's see what is the main cost drivers. So you can see on the cost side, a shrimp RAS farm is driven by a few big categories. So feed is normally the single largest cost line, but in cold climates, heat and electricity are also a significant part. We then have a post-larvae, health, labor, overhead, oxygen generation, and a recurring line for salt and mineralization to reach and maintain the right water chemistry. And what makes the business risky is not just the level of these costs, but their volatility, especially energy prices, feed prices, and any disruptions that affect survival or economic feed conversion ratio. If we move to the next slide, here we focus on how that volatility shows up in cost of goods per kilo. So you can see two different scale RAS farm models, 100-ton per year on the left and 1,000-ton per year on the right. And the list has some of the major cost factors involved and how their volatility can impact cost of goods sold expressed in euros per kilogram of shrimp produced. So, for example, when energy prices swing or when we have even small changes in economic FCR and survival, the effective cost per kilogram of shrimp sold can move quite a lot. That's why we use concepts like economic FCR, so feed per kilo actually sold, not just produced. And we also look at thermal energy per kilo to see what a change in heat price would mean for the bottom line of the business. So you can clearly see that when the operation is smaller, for example, 100 ton on the left, the cost volatility impacts are much, much larger than we have then when compared to the larger scale enterprise. And why this slide matters even more is to show that mineralization and heat, so our premises for this project, although playing a part in cost of goods sold and volatility, is not that heavy on the whole costs. That's really important for the next slide. So in this work, we treated geothermal integration in two distinct but complementary tracks. The blue track is geothermal brine for water mineralization. That's where pilot 2 gives us empirical data. We compare brine-based mineralization against the control case using fresh water plus synthetic salt. The orange track is geothermal heat coupling through closed loop heat exchangers, purely theoretical. At this stage, based on available heat sources and temperature levels at candidate locations and benchmarking from available resources online. Next slide, please. So we'll see how the geothermal really fits into the RAS shrimp farming. So on the mineralization side, on the left, geothermal brine is treated as a processed water input. It is pre-treated, if needed, quality checked, blended with fresh water, and supplemented with missing ions before it reaches culture tanks. On the heat side, on the right, the geothermal resource connects to the farm via closed-loop heat exchangers. The geothermal loop and the culture water loop never mix. That's essential. So heat is transferred, but the fluids remain separate. Let's move on. So a quick snapshot of the pilot 2, which we worked closely on Tetra's project. So pilot 2 focused specifically on the mineralization track. So they compare the control setup using fresh water and a low-cost salt mixture with setups where a portion of the salt was replaced by diluting geothermal brine to maintain required salinity. Although some other chemistry parameters were slightly higher or lower than anticipated. But that is not a point here. So pre-treatment was not needed as the water has been checked in lab and deemed safe for human consumption. Growth performance was kept within the expected range. The key takeaways is that using geothermal brine for mineralization appears feasible, provided that we manage contaminants, maintain quality assurance on brine quality, and account for the full cost of pre-treatment and supplementation if needed. Let's move on. So in our work to make sense of the economics, we first defined a baseline 100 ton per year modular RAS farm model. The design and performance targets in this model are based on commercially proven pilot practices from potential technology provider and our Acola's internal engineering synthesis. So you can see the base figures of the farm and the cost of goods sold breakdown. Let's move on. And so as expected, when we replicate this 100-ton module to larger sizes, we see favorable scale economies. Certain costs, especially shared infrastructure and utilities, do not scale linearly with tonnage. As a result, capital intensity per kilo decreases when we move from 100 to 300 to 1,000 or even more. So this you can see in this graph. We can move on quickly. And so for the mineralization lever, we are essentially asking what happens if geothermal brine partially or fully replaces synthetic salt in our conditioned water. So you can see on the left the premises for this theory, and on the right side you can see the ideal scenario where the full cost of mineralization are replaced by using geothermal brine. So this is an ideal scenario, which is not really feasible at large scales. Let's move on and see that the second lever is geothermal heat, which is our work is still theoretical and need more exploration. So here we compare a reference heating solution with a scenario where part of the thermal demand is met by geothermal heat through closed loop exchangers. So you can see different scenarios. So as mentioned before, these are purely theoretical, and we need more experiments and more studies to let you know if this is feasible or not. Let's move on. So both geothermal tracks come with clear risks and conditions. On the mineralization side, we must control trace metals, sulfide, variability in brine composition. That means robust pretreatment, regular lab testing, and predefined pass-fail limits with the options to bypass geothermal input if quality is not acceptable. And also the transport and storage costs involved in using this lever. On the heat side, the key issues are availability, duty match, and pricing. We address those through redundancy in equipment, clear SLAs, and careful modeling of the heat contract structure. So the last slide to close my presentation. So I wanted to give a few clear recommendations from in our view. First, we need a stable, economically viable recirculating aquaculture system technology at scale for shrimp, operating profitably on its own. So geothermal should be an enhancement, not a compensation. Second, we should continue to quantify the economic potential and risks of using geothermal brine and geothermal heat, refining our assumptions as new data comes in. This is a very dynamic field. Third, it's important to evaluate the environment and sustainability aspects, including CO2 footprint, water and discharge impacts, and how these align with policy and market expectations. And finally, we should move forward through disciplined pilots and site-specific studies, turning promising concepts possibly into operational, financeable solutions. So thank you for listening, and you will be able to find much more detailed information in our final deliverable for Tetras project, which will be completed soon. So thank you for listening.
Great, thank you so much, Batas. Any questions? Please put them in the chat, and we're gonna bring them up at the end. And now I'm handing back over to Frederick with a different hat. So we're gonna go back and talk a little bit about seaweed.
Thank you, Maya. Yes, me again. I promise this is my last presentation of the day, and I'll be equally fast. So yeah, next slide, please. I'm still representing SPRO, this time under a different project, so the EU for Algae Stakeholder Platform. Next slide, please. Yeah, so it is positioning itself as the kind of European central hub or stakeholder platform for all things algae. Next slide, please. And despite the summit, which you saw in the previous slide, there are a number of outputs from this project. One of them is a report on the business case or potential business case for bioremediation using regenerative ocean farming, which I spoke about in the previous presentation. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the business case, as I've also seen in the chat, for seaweed is definitely not there yet. I mean, we need much more market demand and much more offtake agreements and uptake from European markets and global markets, actually. But what I'm going to talk about here is the potential for both phycoremediation and also carbon storage. And obviously sequestration is different to storage, and that is something that is often mixed up. And I'm just going to do a short little pitch basically for these two things. Next slide, please. So phycoremediation, anyone who knows, any scientist will probably know the term phycology as the study of algae. And remediation is, yeah, curing, cleaning, or healing something, for example, mitigating environmental damage. Next slide, please. And this is similar to mycoremediation, but this is using fungi. So mycoremediation is quite well known for biological, chemical, and industrial uses. And what we're saying with this presentation is that there is potential for algae to do the same thing. Next slide, please. Yeah, so phycoremediation, as I said, is the combination of phycology and remediation to absorb nutrients, take up pollutants, and break down harmful substances in the environment. Next slide, please. So this is then broken down further into upstream phycoremediation in the report and downstream phycoremediation. Next slide, please. So upstream, of course, is up in the mountains where the rain happens, and then the water comes down the mountains through the rivers into the sea, which is the downstream area. Next slide, please. I think it's loading again. Okay, so if we look at upstream, next slide. This is something we're all familiar with. So upstream, especially if you live near a big city or a town, wastewater treatment plants are something that you will probably have seen. And algae are already used in these facilities to treat water, to take up nutrients, to remove harmful substances. So this is an example of upstream phycoremediation. Next slide, please. And it can be used for things like phosphorus recovery. So phosphorus is a critical raw material because it's a finite resource. So it's very important to capture as much of this phosphorus, which is used in agriculture, and then it often runs off down the rivers into the sea and is kind of lost. So there are ways to recover this through algae cultivation. Next slide, please. And then downstream phycoremediation, next slide. Yeah, so this doesn't really exist in a fully mature form, but there is a huge potential for seaweed cultivation to reduce the risk of harmful algae blooms, for example, in places like the Baltic, which is highly eutrophied, by cultivating seaweeds to take up the nitrogen and phosphates in the water. Next slide, please. And in the report, we tried to put this together into a big picture, so a big concept, combining both upstream and downstream measures with different strategic placement of algae cultivation. So on land, upstream, of course, it's the microalgae in wastewater treatment plants can be used to capture carbon in industrial symbioses, similar to the shrimp example in the previous presentation. It could also be used for decontamination if there's a site with high quantities of heavy metals in the water, perhaps something from the Second World War, where there's unexploded bombs, shipwrecks, leaking harmful substances. That could be a kind of strategic way to take those nutrients out of the water. There's nutrient recycling, like nitrogen and phosphate, as I mentioned. Then there's biomass production for food and products, and then ecosystem restoration as well for biodiversity support. And then the interesting thing here, which we'll come to in the next slides, is the sea to soil transfer. So next slide, please. So this is about how we move the biomass from the sea back onto the land, and this is all about circular economy. So carbon is obviously a very controversial topic, but I'm only going to, flirt with the topic a little bit, but not go into too much detail. Next slide, please. So there's a carbon removal certification framework regulation that came out from the EU, the European Commission in 2022, and there is no active carbon removal regulation in the EU. This is just a recommendation for how the framework could be built, and it recommends long-lasting products, as I've highlighted here, marine reservoirs, obviously, like coastal environments, soil health as well, and bio-based construction products. So just keeping that in mind, we can go to the next slide. And this is a report from McKinsey about blue carbon and the potential for blue carbon. And it shows that, so here we've got kelp restoration, seagrass restoration, and seaweed farming as these kind of emerging blue carbon solutions. Of course, for this whole thing to be valid, it needs to have monitoring, reporting, and verification. So it needs to have the monitoring in place that can actually quantify how much carbon is being taken up, what happens to it after the biomass is harvested, etc., etc. But you'll see that the impact is much higher with the active regeneration than the passive conservation measures, which is just about protecting habitat, which is equally important, but the impact is not necessarily as high, depending on the scale. Next slide, please. So yeah, the argument in the report is rather than focusing on monitoring in the sea, where it's extremely complicated with all of these different moving parts, why not focus on the land, something that is easy to quantify in the short term. Next slide, please. And that there is already a market for, because if you look at this website, CDR, or carbon dioxide removal.fyi, it's a strange URL, but that's the correct one. The actual deliveries, so this means the carbon credits that are actually being sold and delivered, 92% of those, or 93% even, is biochar. So that is burnt wood, basically, that is then reapplied to soils. Again, there's a question of what happens to that once it's in the soil. If it gets ploughed the next year, then that is going to release carbon into the air again. But for things like rewilding projects or restoration of things like wetlands, it would be a good solution. And it doesn't just have to be burnt wood, it could also be burnt seaweed. So next slide, please. And this is an age-old tradition. In Ireland, one of the leading European seaweed countries, seaweed has been harvested for centuries, if not millennia. And so the biochar case is one that meets both the mission ocean objectives and the mission soil objectives for increasing water retention, which tackles things like drought, so preventing soil erosion. There's a lot of boxes that it ticks, and it can either be used in biochar or in seaweed compost to improve plant health. So it's closing that loop between the land and the sea. Next slide, please. Yeah, so in the report, we look at other growth markets, and phosphorus, as I mentioned, is already one because it's a critical raw material. It doesn't necessarily have such a high predicted growth rate, but because it's a finite resource, it's going to be important, yeah, indefinitely. Then we look at secondary commodities, which is basically processed products, and the highest growth rate or the most investment so far is going into bioplastics. Generally, this is done with things like potato starch or cellulose, but there's potential, and there are a few companies active in this space with seaweeds and algae. Sustainable construction materials is another one, so bioarchitecture, making things like algae bricks or other materials out of seaweeds. Biochar, I've mentioned, also has a high growth rate and also has an actual market already in existence. And then finally, as Martins was mentioning, the monitoring tools, so the digital ocean twin, we need the tools to be able to do the monitoring, and there's actually a surprisingly high growth rate predicted for that in the next 5 to 10 years. Next one, please. Yeah, so the key takeaways are that the bioremediation can be a core competence or like a spin-off for a regenerative ocean farming enterprise. So they could focus really on getting the carbon credits if there was a market there that made a lot of money. That's not there yet, but in the meantime, it could be a supplementary spin-off for their business. It can contribute to soil remediation, as I mentioned with the land-sea interactions. It also goes into ocean alkalinity enhancement in the report by combining things like mussels and oysters. But you'll have to read the report for that. And then regeneration, as we mentioned, requires the monitoring first and foremost, and it needs to be well monetized, not just for carbon, but also things like biodiversity, the number of jobs that it creates, the amount of value it keeps within the local community, this kind of thing, for it to be defined or yeah, called regenerative. And then VCMs stands for voluntary carbon markets, which are at the current time the only kind of carbon markets out there. There's not like a European, there is a trading system, but it's not a proper carbon market. It's the only option, and there's a lot of misinformation out there with carbon credits, etc. So that they are potentially misleading, which is why it's important that the EU develops its own kind of framework for this. And then finally, as we mentioned with the bioplastics and the construction materials, high permanence carbon products are of the highest priority in terms of bioremediation, because these are things that are going to last a long time in the soil, in the water, underground for a long time. And the IPCC recommends products that last over 1,000 years if we're going to stay in line with our climate goals, not over 100 years. So keeping the stuff in the ground is very important, and a good way to do that is with bioplastics and construction materials. Thank you. I think that's the last slide. Yeah, there's a couple more reports coming up, I think next year. So one is the Algae Industry Roadmap. The next one is going to go into more detail about carbon and nutrients. And then there's another one about algae legislation as well. So thank you very much for listening. I've gone slightly over time. Sorry about that.
No worries, Fredrik. Thank you so much. Very, very interesting. So we are going to move on and move away from the algae topic, and we're going to talk a little bit about the business models of MPAs with Franziska.
Yes, thanks so much, Maya. Yeah, as Maya already said, we looked a lot more at more tangible products, and now we're looking a bit more at a intangible product, which are MPAs, and how they can also create a business case, and also how they can be financed. Just to set the scene, yeah, you can continue. A little bit, this whole research has been done under the project of, or under the umbrella of the Blue for All project, which lasts 4 years, is ending next year, and which is focusing on enhancing the effectiveness of European MPAs through a bottom-up approach. And to do this, we are creating tools and eventually an overarching what we so far call blueprint platform, where MPA managers can go to and get solutions and tools for their management issues, one of them being lack of MPA financing. And we've been working with 14 different MPAs to test these different tools and co-develop them. Yes, continue. Regarding MPAs, we so far, even though, as most of you probably know, we have the 30 by 30 goal, only 8.1% of the seas are protected globally yet. In the EU, it looks a little bit better, but there we have 12.1% protected, and only 1.8% of the protected seas are protected with management plans. And if you continue, this this can be very extensively also traced back to shortcomings due to underfunding and capacity issues. As studies found that, for example, 65% of global MPAs face budget issues, and in the Mediterranean, they only 12% of their funding needs are met. Continue. So as you know, we're approaching businesses obviously from a business mindset. We also took this on to introduce the idea of looking at an MPA as a business from a business mindset, as has been done more and more in conservation. And of course, there is multiple approaches to monetize these kind of outputs that we have from MPAs or conservation efforts. But of course, it's not easy, and there's a lot of issues with this still. But what we did is that we looked at what kind of financing mechanisms are out there and how can we understand MPAs from a business perspective without, of course, treating it as business, because our overarching goal of an MPA is not to make money, but to conserve the environment. For that, we just unfortunately need money. And for that, then we developed 2 tools that help MPA managers identify the financial gap that the MPA has, and also then to choose suitable financing mechanisms for this MPA. And we tested this in 3 different MPAs. Next, please. When we look now, we've been talking a lot about business models, plans, cases. And when we look at that from the MPA world, it doesn't really look at, what does the company bring from a business perspective, but what does the MPA deliver as an ecological, social, and economic value, which can, to some extent, be monetized. To some extent, we're still struggling with that, for example, through ecosystem service valuation. And then in the business plan, this should be integrated with the management plan. We can set up a strategic plan that details the actions, the resource management, what resources does the MPA already have, where are these resources allocated, and how can this be enforced and monitored. Yes, continue. So then, to give you an overview over what kind of financial mechanisms for MPAs are out there, we did an extensive literature review and grouped them into 10 different categories. And I just want to walk you a little bit through this. So for one, we have the donations and philanthropy and the public and government support. Those are more like the standard MPA financing categories that we are using currently, especially in Europe. So there we have grants or donations, or also donations through crowdfunding. And then, of course, the government budget allocation, which happens yearly, and which can also be funneled through levies, taxes, and fines. And also a lot of MPAs get additional budget through EU projects. Then we have more the market-based mechanisms, which are especially globally, but also in the EU, becoming more of a topic for MPAs. For example, through carbon credits, which also relates back to things that were discussed earlier, also that Frederick said, and for example, also blue bonds or debt for nature swaps, which we've seen, for example, in the Seychelles. And then, of course, corporations can come more into the field through either sponsorships or public-private partnerships or eco certifications. Tourism and recreation is also an important possible revenue for MPAs. So here we're talking, for example, user fees or revenue sharing of the tourism industry, different tourism packages or virtual access fees. Next. There should be a second slide. There's no other slide. Yes, there we go. Thank you. Then we also have different funds that are also popping up that are supporting MPAs. For example, the Conservation Trust Fund, but also other funds that raise money, for example, through donations and then invest part of this into other sustainable businesses and are then using the revenue from those investments to support MPA management. Then also risk finances and insurance are becoming more of a topic, as well as different research, educational, innovation programs. And then, of course, licensing and sustainable use is important, as in a lot of MPAs, activities are still taking place. And so they could be licensed or are partially licensed depending on the MPA. And there we differentiate between extractive or non-extractive licenses. For example, using the space for touristic activities or for fishing. And then the community can also become part of the MPA financing. Sorry, this is wrong, but for example, also through membership fees of the community or also through volunteering. Yes, continue. Yes, I'm just going to go into this very briefly because I don't have too much time left, I think, but some of the issues that we have when looking into how private companies can get involved in MPA financing, because as I said before, so far it is mainly a donation or grant-based or government-based. And this is partially because there is some issues with the criteria that need to be fulfilled for investors or impact investors, which might be most interesting for MPAs to get involved. And for one, this is that there is very little revenue streams. Revenue streams mainly come through sustainable businesses within the MPAs. There's not always sufficient data on the impact that would be achieved because we sometimes still struggle with showcasing and monitoring properly the impact, especially on a short run of MPAs. And then there's also a high perceived risk, but there is, of course, risk mitigation measures also available, such as through guarantees. Next. You can just click us through. Thank you. Then the operational capability is often connected to capacity deficits, and MPA managers do not always have the capacity or also the skills to deal with these kind of financing mechanisms. But this can be, for example, addressed by creating a public-private partnership where the private partner would then bring in the expertise and also through investing in capacity building in the MPAs. Then sometimes there is also scalability issues, of course, with the business plans or with the business cases, because each MPA is different and there's no one size fits all. But especially if we look at regions, at countries or at MPA networks, these cases could be replicated. And then the last barrier is, of course, the regulatory framework and the politics, which is really dependent on each country, and especially in the EU, there is less regulatory space for, for example, co-managing MPAs. Next, please. And just to show you how a business case could look like, how this could be set up. In the case of an MPA, and this is an example from Blue Finance, who set up a scheme. This is based on an MPA network in the Philippines. And here they involve the blue economy sectors in financing the MPAs. So you, for one, have the financing streams coming from both through grants, but also through investors, backed up through guarantees. And they then go into a blended financing facility managed by the co-management team of the MPA, which consists of both the local government, some financial experts, and an NGO. And that money is then invested both in the reef positive businesses as well as in the MPA management. And building up these reef positive businesses then brings back the revenue, which can be paid back to the investors. And here in this case, they're talking about tourism programs, visitor center, and then some collection of sea cucumber or mangrove crabs. And they're also developing blue carbon credits at the moment. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Franziska. This was great to really see some of the financing mechanisms in there as well. And if people want to read more about it, I think they can contact you. And also we have the European Investment report that gives some insights into that in EU. We're going to move on to our last presentation for today. We're running a little bit behind, so we're going to cut in a little bit on the panel discussion, but we have some great questions in the chat. Any more, please put them there, and we're going to try to touch upon as many as we can by the end. And with that, I'm handing over to Axel, talking about the business case of invasive species and the round goby project.
Yes, my name is Axel Ludren. I work for LIFE in the Interreg project promoting commercial fishing of round goby in the Baltic Sea. And LIFE is an umbrella organization for small-scale fishermen all over Europe, and we are a partner in the project. Next one, please. And we can take one more, please. Yes, and here's a little bit some just as information about the project. We are a lot of different partners in the project, from universities to small-scale fishermen, and we are spread through, I think it's 7 different countries around the Baltic Sea, and we have a duration of 3 years, and so we are on the almost the last year now. Next one, please. Yes, and some background information about round goby. And the round goby is an invasive species in the Baltic Sea, and it originates from the Black Sea region and has come to the Baltic Sea through ballast water on big commercial ships. And it was discovered in the 90s, and it has spread very rapidly. It's because it's very adaptable. So now we have it almost all over the Baltic Sea, and it has also spread to the Great Lakes in the US and in many rivers in Europe. Yes, next one, please. And we in the project, we see it as a potential food resource, both for human and as a pet food, and it is here to stay in the Baltics. So why not eat it? And our recent toxicological report has shown very low levels of heavy metals and other contaminants. So therefore we see it as a potential, and especially since we are supposed to eat fish 2 to 3 times a week, according to, for example, the Swedish Food Agency, and many stocks are declining in the Baltics, for example. Next one, please. And in the project we are investigating different aspects surrounding how to kind of promote the commercial fishing around goby, and that involves everything from new fishing methods and gears and what kind of products it could be developed from around goby, and how it could be developed in an economically sustainable way. Yes, and also about the stock and contamination levels, as I just mentioned. Next, please. Yeah, and that is done in 9 different pilot studies that is done by our project partners. And as you see, it involves fishing gear and canned run goby and pet snacks, and all these different aspects. And I think we can move on also. Yes, next. Yeah, and a little bit about the results from these studies and the actual business cases as we see it. And when it comes to the taste, our kind of testing and service has shown that this has great potential. We have everyone from dogs to Kostas Kadis and the Swedish Prime Minister, as you see in the picture, appreciate the test, and also the school children appreciate it, but it also has some major challenges to when it comes to introduce it as a fish. So we can go to next one, please. Yes, and regarding the potential, as I mentioned, is the fish is here to stay, so we should see it as a potential to increase the local and national seafood production in the Baltic Sea region, and in the Baltic states, I mean in Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, it is already exported to the Black Sea region, like Ukraine and Bulgaria, and there it's a highly appreciated food source for the local gastronomy. And the pet food market is, I mean, I think it's estimated to be worth around 57 billion last year in just Europe. So it has great potential to be part of that market. Next one, please. Yes, and when it comes to the main kind of challenges, one aspect is that it's a very small fish. It's I think the medium size is around maybe 15 centimeters. So it's in all the kind of chain, it has a lot of costs that needs to be reduced when it comes to processing and make it suitable for the market. It is solutions to every one of these kind of problems, especially when it comes to processing machinery. So it is machinery out there, but it needs to be integrated into the supply chain. I think you can go to the next one. Yes, and we have been doing in the project, we've been doing interviews with different stakeholders throughout the supply chains, from fishermen to chefs and food supplier, wholesalers, and what fishermen needs. most in order to kind of start to fish around goby commercial is a buyer, and to be able to sell to the right price. And what we see is also that if they are able to add value to the catch, that the amount they need to catch reduce very much, and then the small scale fishermen already are kind of add value to their catch, so they don't have to, catch so much fish. And that is what I try to kind of explain with these numbers here, that if you have your own restaurant, you can create the same value with 3 kilo of fish that if you just sell it for €2 per kilo, you need much more fish. Yes. And next one, please. Yes, and when it comes to wholesalers, their kind of main aspect in order to start to sell around goby is, of course, the demand from chefs or schools or other sellers, shops, fishmongers, and in some aspects they also need, of course, processing capabilities to increase the value in some way, or the fish also in many cases has to be certified, like with Marine Stewardship Council, or so, because the buyers require that. We can go to the next one. Yes, and chefs is also a very interesting group, because they are in many aspects the one that starts the kind of trend when it comes to what fishes we eat. And they of course require a functioning value chain and someone to buy the fish from. And they also, when it comes to high-end chefs, they require a fish that is sought after, like turbot, for example. That is an interesting example, because that fish for not so many years ago was in many ways regarded as a trash fish, a fish you gave to the chickens. But now it's a highly luxury fish on the finest restaurants. But the market for high-end restaurant is quite small. They also prefer the fish to be prepared in some ways. And when it comes to the public kitchen, like schools, it's a very big market, but they require a lower price, and the fish also needs to be certified with different standards. They also prefer, of course, processed fish to fillets or minced meat. Next one, please. Yes, and what? Sorry, I just need to drink acid. And what we see is that the fishermen and the other stakeholders in the supply chains need some kind of fundings in order to reduce the risk, in order to kind of develop the fishing and the selling of round goby. For fishermen, that involves processing machinery to create fillets to kind of reduce the risk per kilo. We also, and today it's very much a kind of niche product, but it is on the same time very much abundant in the Baltic Sea. So it's important to continue to work and invest in the market and develop the fishery. Next one, please. Yes, and I think that the kind of the one of the more important aspect is to see it as a way to support small scale fishery, because they are especially in the Baltic, they are very rapidly disappearing. So And so it's also an opportunity to kind of give them a way to increase their income and support the local communities. Yes, next one. I think I said the most here, but I think my kind of core message is that we need to continue to work on different. It's a long-term work, and we kind of continue to need to work throughout the whole value chain with the gears and financing solutions and policy frameworks. Thank you.
Amazing, Axel. Thank you so much. I think this was really interesting, also to kind of take an environmental problem and shape it into, enabling social change as well. So with this, we have 10 minutes for some questions. So we're going to have a short and fiery question round. We have some questions already here in the chat. So I'm going to start with some questions about seaweed. One that we have is regarding the biomass produced in Europe, and asking if it's mostly sold in the EU, or if EU can be a market for the biomass produced locally, or if we should consider from the beginning a global market, which is also followed up with how do we accelerate the demand in Europe for the European production. And I can see that Fredrik has already answered in the chat, so maybe you can also speak up and share with the rest.
Yeah, I'm sure other people have also valuable input to put here, so I wouldn't take too much time. But just to emphasize the point that producing stuff in Europe is expensive because we are kind of a high cost, low growth economy. So everything costs a lot of money, and the trend is going in the wrong direction in that respect. There are other industries we could look at, like agriculture, which has so-called internal protection measures, which basically safeguard the jobs of European farmers compared to global players. Because what happens a lot in these global markets is that produce gets dumped in other countries. So very cheap imported stuff from, I don't know, Brazil or Asia or whatever, can sell their stuff a lot cheaper than domestic markets. So the EU has protection measures to protect European farmers against this kind of activity. And yeah, that would be one idea. But obviously it would be a long political process to get this implemented. It's something that we are advocating for, but there's no kind of timescale about this at the moment. And it's something that gets deprioritized whenever something more important comes along, like the war in Ukraine or other geopolitical issues. So in terms of making the price competitive compared to other sectors, subsidies are one option, and other internal protection measures like tariffs as well are also an option, even though tariffs have been made pretty infamous in recent years. But there are measures out there. But I'm keen to hear if anyone has other suggestions.
Yeah, does anyone else of our speakers have anything in connection to algae or seaweed? And otherwise, I would kind of want to ask the same question to our fish people.
I just want to add a comment here as well regarding technology capabilities. So yeah, it's a high price market, right? But as well, European is a leader in technological innovations as well. So basically, if we could develop a huge cascade biorefinery complexes where we can process this biomass in multiple different compounds and then sell these compounds, some at high price, some at lower price, this could actually be as a technological solution as well for Europe. Yeah, so there is multiple opportunities how to approach this, but of course, as I mentioned, it should be a holistic approach. We need to approach from all directions at the same time, and then it should work.
Thank you. And I'm thinking that this fits well, especially with the Run Goby presentation that we just had as well, since you're competing with the a less expensive market than the Baltic Sea for the products, and also you mentioned that the demand is very low. So how are you tackling those issues? Maybe we can learn something from the around goby world.
I guess that was a question for me.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, it's a good. I'm not sure if I really have any answers, but what we've seen is also, I mean, the kind of price to produce 1 kilo of round goby differs also throughout the Baltic Sea because of different salaries. So it's and a way to tackle that is of course by adding value or by adapting different kind of machineries that can produce fillets of the fish. That's a practical way of kind of reducing the cost. Yeah. I don't know if I have any more, if that was an answer or what more I can say.
No, but I think I mean that also connects to the demand side, how we increase the demand of these biomasses.
Yeah.
Nice. We'll go over to some more questions that we have here in the chat, and maybe we can actually tick off some of them. So we have a question specifically for Martins about the introduction of new species in the Irish hatchery and regarding regulation. And I think regulation is kind of a bottleneck that we're experiencing in many of the sectors in the blue bioeconomy. So maybe you can give us a comment on that.
Yeah, regarding this Irish case, as far as I remember from reports, but I wouldn't be the best person actually to answer this. I think the lead of this business case should answer this question. But the idea was to introduce local species that are already cultivated there, so there shouldn't be this bottleneck regarding legislation part. Of course, there's a lot of different species with high potential we actually could use, but as you mentioned, it can have this issue, and it takes time, of course, to integrate it into the system and prove it. But I think in this business case, it's already proven species, but they are just need to be scaled up or cultivated in commercial scale. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
And in connection to that, we also had, or in connection to kind of the demand side more, we have a question about these new species in the hatcheries and if it's really beneficial for the sector to try out hatcheries with these new species, since we can already see a lack of demand for the cultivators and that they're not able to sell their biomass. So I think this is again a question for mostly for our seaweed and algae experts here. How can we actually create a sustainable financial business case from producing seaweed and algae in Europe today? Because there seems to be some kind of gap that we need to address.
Maybe I will comment first. So regarding hatcheries, as far as I see, it's very dependent on the region. So each region has its own specifics, their specific environment, specific species, market value, and so on. So we should develop these specific hatcheries in these specific regional centers based on the needs of that region. And I think that's one point how to grow it, because of course there's at some regions potential of high cultivation of specific species, but there isn't enough of demand, right? So you need to catch up somewhere, you need to grow this market demand, and then you can again scale back through the value chain to increase these operations in hatcheries or in different points. But there is still some regions that needs hatcheries to just start commercial cultivation. It depends, I think, very on the region for the answer.
Anyone else of our seaweed people want to chip in on how to boost the demand so that we can do something with the biomass that we produce?
I could maybe jump in. So maybe following other trends in markets like alternative meat and alternative seafood, for example. So one example that comes to mind is the Better Fish company in Germany, making like vegan tuna, basically, and they've been very canny at identifying a growing market and a declining market, which is the wild tuna catches, similar to the Next Tuna company that we mentioned before. I would argue the Better Fish model is a lot more sustainable than the Next Tuna model, because you're not requiring inputs like feed, which tuna, I expect, eat a lot of. But yeah, I think following trends and maybe combining trends like alternative seafood, and then integrating these low trophic biomasses into them with functional properties like alginate as a texturizer, I think is how they use it in the tuna replacement. So yeah, identifying those big market trends and then trying to tap into them with the unique qualities of whatever biomass you're using, whether that's brown goby or seaweed or bivalves. Nice, thank you. Our last minutes, I also want to turn back a little bit to our speakers that were a bit more focused on the environmental aspect. So we have Anna and Francisca from the MPA MSP area. So it sounds like sustainability and kind of the environmental drive is one of the main kind of cases that we have for the blue economy. There we go. But it seems to be lacking a little bit of traction from the public. So how can we really make these financially sustainable business cases based on the environmental benefits that they give?
That is a very good question. I'm not sure if I can answer this too much in detail, but I mean, I think the main part is that most sustainable businesses understand that they are, they only function if the environment is doing well. And I mean, I think this is also something that we've heard now in all the presentations. They're all based, these businesses are all based on this idea. And we, on the other side, also see a growing interest in the public to spend more money on sustainable food, to spend more money on ecotourism and so on. So I think just if we can grow both of these at the same time, the interest from the entrepreneurs and the interest from the general public, then we have a growing market in this. But then again, also one thing that we need to keep in mind also when it comes to MPAs is we can never do any of this from a mass perspective, right? The only way it stays sustainable is if we control the mass of it as well. And I think, yeah, especially when we look at MPAs, because we do want to restrict access as much as possible if it could potentially harm, because then it's not on also the way that MPAs unfortunately work today in many cases, then it's not the sanctuary that they are set up to be.
And that connects also to Frederick's first presentation about the regenerative ocean farming and the kind of community-based gardening aspect of it. I like that we have to feel more responsibility for what we produce and maybe also what we consume. We have reached almost the end of our last webinar of the year. And thank you so much, all of the speakers, for coming here and talking about your examples from the projects. We're going to share all of the slides that you've seen. And if you have any questions for any of the speakers, we can connect them to you. And we're going to come out with some notes that you can find in Blue Biomatch as well. Our last part of today, I'm handing over to Alberto, who is going to talk a little bit about empowering the blue economy in the Baltic and North Sea, and some open calls that maybe can lead to some financially sustainable business models in the area.
Exactly. Thanks so much, Maya. Hi, everyone. So I'm here to deliver good news for the last presentation. My name is Alberto Terenzi, and I lead the team at SUBMARINER that deals with innovation support and blue skills, and also with policy. And the good news I want to deliver is that in September we started a brand new project called Blue Action Banos, which is part of the Mission Ocean funded projects. So it's a project that will empower, and by empower I also mean fund, sustainable transitions for the Baltic and North Sea. If I can ask you to go to the next slide, please. So for those of you that are not familiar with Mission Ocean has three objectives: to protect and restore ecosystems and biodiversity, to prevent and eliminate pollution in ocean, seas, and waters in general, and to also make the blue economy carbon neutral and circular. We can go to the next slide. And to fulfill these three objectives, Blue Action Banos will support different communities throughout the Banos region in three ways. So there will be funded community-led actions project, and I will explain in a second what these will be. There will be funded transition agendas, and I'll also explain in a second. But throughout the cycle of these projects, we will provide technical assistance to the projects per se, but also to interested communities that maybe will not be funded. So we'll also create a circle of knowledge sharing from experts to the people on the ground that many people in the Banos, so Baltic and North Sea ecosystem at large, can benefit from. Next, please. So I was talking about these community-led actions and transition agendas. So what are these? So community-led actions are projects that are action-oriented. So we are not funding research here. Sorry for the researchers in the room. But basically what we want is really to have local, regional, or sector-based collaborations that deliver an impact. So they deliver something concrete for the community that they target, and implement these concrete actions. And in the case of transition agendas, this is more funding that communities can get to basically elaborate strategic roadmaps on a topic which is in line with the Mission Ocean objectives, and that they can use this funding to include stakeholders, to plan for a multi-year roadmap action plan, so that the project is really about creating these targets, and then the implementation of these targets will fall outside of the project scope and duration. So if we go to the next slide, we come to the juicy part, which is about the funding. So community-led actions can be projects that can go from 200,000 to 2 million per each project. We have 7 million euro in total to fund these projects. So you can imagine kind of the average number of projects that we will fund based also on the size of the best projects we will receive applications for. And transition agendas are much smaller, leaner projects, which can be up to 100,000 euro each. And so we will fund many more of those, 20 to 25, so that we can empower more transitioning across the Baltic Sea region. Next slide, please. And again, for the people that apply for these projects, this will not be kind of a traditional project implementation journey, because the consortia that will be funded will not only get the money and then a project officer that will follow the administrative development of the project, but they will also get technical assistance. As a matter of fact, we will also concretely ask people to tell us already at the proposal development stage what technical assistance they might need in order for the projects, be it transition agendas or community-led actions, to be successful, so that we can provide that. And again, we want to benefit not only the few, unfortunately, people that will get the funding, but all of the community at large. So we will also create a knowledge hub for sharing information on Blue Biomatch, and also dedicated events, including workshops, webinar, peer-to-peer exchange on specific topics, so that the knowledge and the results go way beyond the projects that will be funded. Next, please. And it is just the timeline. So where are these calls? Well, not yet public. So we're working hard on developing all of the call documents, and we will launch on 28th of November. The process for the open calls will have two steps. One first step will be developing a brief project idea form, which applicants will have to submit by 16th of March. And as soon as they submit it, they will then be invited for a consultation with the project consortium. And this is not really a formal stage because the project idea forms will not be evaluated. It's more an orientation meeting to understand, to understand, does the proposed action align with the objectives of Mission Ocean and of the project? Can there be new angles and so on? And then once this consultation is being carried out, the applicants will have access to the full proposal forms, and the final submission, the final deadline for submission will be on 29th of May. So a 6-month kind of application process, after which, of course, there will be an evaluation and selection process. And so we expect that the funded actions will kick off in November 2026. Next, please. And yes, what I said before, so the process will be 2-step. And really the idea with this project idea form and these consultations is to try and also guide applicants and make it easier to understand what possible good directions will be for the project ideas to then be developed further into proposals, so that we make sure that we get as much good input, as many good applications as possible in the final round. And next. So in terms of webinars, and we will have a lot of those in the next year too. We already have 2 planned kind of info webinars about Blue Action Bonus and how to apply. One is a technical webinar where we will go into all of the nitty-gritty of how to apply, how to submit things, what to do, what not to do, all of the legal questions that we all love so much. But then we will also have on the 16th of December an inspirational webinar. This would be where some actions that are already ongoing and that are good examples of what we would like to see in future applications will be presented for inspiration. These webinars will be, of course, recorded, and also there will be more of those in the new year. We will try to accompany the applicants and the applicant's journey as much as possible, so that you feel confident that you can apply for something meaningful to you and your communities. But for now, you can save these dates. The registration is already open on Blue Biomatch, so you can do that. So which countries can apply for Blue Action Bonus? Basically, all of the Baltic and North Sea countries except France and the UK. Can apply. So I would try to list them. If I didn't know that, I would forget some. But basically, I mean, all of the Baltic and North Sea countries, except France and the UK that have a small stretch, we didn't include them in this project. But all of the rest of the countries can apply.
Thank you so much, Alberto. Those are the last words for this webinar, and you can already now put in 10th and 16th of December for the Blue Action Bonus webinars, and then we also have some more upcoming events in our plethora of everything's going on in our different projects. And with that, I would like to thank everybody, especially our great presenters for today, bringing up these good examples. And to all of you that have joined us. You can find all of us on Blue Biomatch, I hope. And if you're not there yet, then please join. That's where we announce all of our events, including all of the Blue Action Bonus events that are going to come up. For any questions, please, you can contact me, Maya, at SUBMARINER. And apart from that, I hope to see you maybe next year or in some of the Blue Action Abundance webinars coming up.